Arcane is an animated Netflix original TV series created by Alex Yee and Christian Link. It takes place in the world of Runeterra in the League of Legends universe with a steampunk magic feel. The story focuses on a set of sisters and a conflict between the wealthy Piltover and what's referred to as the Underground, otherwise called the Nation of Zon. Postmodernism is a natural lens to study it through, as the story has a complicated cast that is difficult to attach traditional hero and villain roles to. They do both good and bad. It's a battle between the wealthy and poor, and most of the characters in it seem intent on blurring traditional notions of heroism, morality, and reality, all important aspects of postmodernism. Arcane utilizes postmodernism in the journeys that its characters take. A traditional modernist hero's journey leads to the characters finding resolution and being rewarded for their good deeds, whereas a postmodern hero's journey rejects that idea completely. It breaks down the idea that people get what they deserve and that the good guys will always do the right thing. This is apparent with Powder, who is cast as one of the good guys. She tries her best, but always seems to fail. She even complains to her sister about it. She is made fun of by others around her, but she keeps trying. She's a classic underdog to root for. Later in episode 3, she finally gets one of her monkey bombs to work in the nick of time to protect her family from Silco's enforcers and a hired mercenary. The only problem is that it works too well and kills her 2 adoptive brothers while leading to the death of her adoptive father, Vander. At one point, she thinks it's her triumphant moment when she comes in saying to her sister, "Vi, it worked. Did you see me? My monkey bomb finally worked," as if to celebrate, but then she quickly realizes what happened. Vi yells at her in anger and leaves her alone in tears. Powder's good intentions and effort lead to catastrophe. She ends up being taken in by Silco, the man who was attacking her family, and instead of triumph, her journey is marked by trauma and alienation, leading her to become a chaotic villain known as Jinx. Powder's sister, Vi, also receives the postmodern treatment. She takes on a leadership role to protect her siblings and community, even being willing to turn herself in to stop enforcers from causing havoc in Zon. She has noble desires and trying to protect those around her, and even yelling at Powder wasn't meant to forsake her. But again, Arcane gives this protagonist a difficult ending in episode 3 with Powder's bomb. She loses her whole family to death or to being taken by her enemies, and her community enters into even more conflict with the enforcers. Postmodernism permeates through this entire story. Whenever you think the protagonists or their ideals will finally win out, they are met with some sort of adversity. Everything about their lives starts to feel impossible to succeed in. Characters in Arcane consistently blur the moral lines of their world. One of the first moments in the series follows protagonists Vi, Powder, and their adoptive brothers Clagger and Milo as they burglarize and destroy someone's home and must escape Piltover's enforcers. Similarly, after being forbidden by Piltover's council to pursue the research of Hextech because it goes against their ethos, Jace and Victor defy the council, break into Heimerdinger's lab, and prove to the council that Hextech can be a valuable contribution to their society. Whereas crimes like theft and burglary are traditionally and universally seen as wrong, Arcane repeatedly celebrates such actions and antagonizes law and morality, suggesting that the concept of universal laws and morality is flawed and does not strictly determine which actions are morally right and which are wrong. Professor Emeritus Nelson H. Vieira suggests that in a postmodern optic where no universal value system predominates, good and evil can no longer appear as clear-cut binary forces. There is no standard to which heroics, ethics, behavior, or aesthetics must be sanctioned. Individuals rather create their own ethical modes of being, and may slip and slide between good and evil as they are constituting themselves. Take Silco, for example. When he kidnaps Vander and kills one of Piltover's enforcers, he sees it as
the base violence necessary for change.
The very title of episode 3. He is sliding in the direction of evil, but in an attempt to do what he sees as the right, ethical thing for him and the nation of Zon.
You'll get people killed. And for what? Pride?
For respect. Opportunity. Everything they've denied us.
Meanwhile, Vander declines Silco's invitation to join his cause because he's
not that man anymore.
Hypocritically shows us just a few scenes later that that man was still very much a part of him. An individual's actions alone do not determine whether they are a hero or a villain. So why is it then that Silco still comes across as villainous while Vander is praised as a hero? French philosopher Roland Barthes argues in his essay, The Death of the Author, that whereas in modern discourse the reader is bound to a certain reality and set of aesthetics by the author, in postmodern discourse the reader is not bound inside any situation. Anush Sidrikin, expands on this, suggesting that just as the reader is not bound by any reality, the postmodern hero is connected only to a certain situation or opinion. If moral foundations and aesthetical categories are exclusively human creations and not part of nature, then heroism has nothing to do with ethics or virtue. It is the interpretations of the reader, or in this case the viewer, that manifest the blurred border between reality and perception. Arcane frequently blurs the borders between reality and perception through both its dialogue and its visual elements. In the aforementioned scene where Jace and Victor break into Heimerdinger's lab, they are caught in the act by Counselor Medarda. Instead of turning them in, she commends their willingness to risk exile for their conviction, stating that
any worthwhile venture involves risk.
But just moments before this, viewers witnessed Vander condemning Silco for his willingness to sacrifice everything we are in his fight against Piltover, saying,
It's not the way. Can't you see that?
So, is one's willingness to risk everything something to be praised or condemned? Additionally, Vander condemns Silco's use of violence to solve Zaun's issues with Piltover, but he and Vi just as easily resort to violence when attempting to solve their issue with Silco. Interestingly, despite being an animated show, Arcane intentionally uses videography techniques to communicate messages to the viewer. When framing a subject, a low camera angle that is looking up at a subject suggests dominance, something often used to portray villains in cinema, such as Hannibal Lecter in Silence of the Lambs. On the flip side, a high camera angle looking down at a subject suggests vulnerability. In framing Vander and Silco, and subsequently Vi and Powder, in this way in the climax of episode 3, Arcane blurs our perception of what Vander and Silco are. The confusion is only furthered when you notice that in this scene, Vander's left eye has been visibly injured, mirroring Silco's infected left eye. Vander and Silco are not opposites. Rather, they can very easily be perceived as the same, an idea reinforced once again at the end of the episode when Silco protectively holds Powder in the same way that Vi is seen doing in the promotional material for Arcane. What cultural insights can we gain from Arcane? Storytelling and visual choices like those mentioned above are big indicators that the show's creators believe we live in a postmodern society. The creators made intentional storytelling decisions in order to emphasize that anyone can be both good and evil in Piltover. Both Powder, later Jinx, and Vi are shown to be sympathetic at times and villainous at others. If Arcane's creators had taken a more modernist approach to their storytelling, Powder and Vi's storytelling would have gone similarly to how Luke Skywalker's did in the original Star Wars movies, consistently the hero in a world of black and white morality. While Luke often has setbacks, his literal and moral victory is assured. Powder and Vi's story doesn't go like Luke Skywalker's. The show's creators ask the audience to decide who's the hero and who's the villain, and force the audience to shift their views on the matter based on the character's actions. In modern life, we have to reevaluate public figures based on their actions, similarly to how we reevaluate the characters in Arcane. During the first 3 episodes of Arcane, Silco is very obviously the antagonist. Vander and several other characters end up dead due to his schemes. But in episode 3, we learn more about his motivations, and he becomes a more sympathetic character. He also ends up adopting Powder when she is briefly abandoned by Vi. Arcane does a good job of demonstrating the real-life principle that knowing someone's motivation for their actions makes it easier to get along with and understand them. In modernist media, the villain would be evil for more superficial reasons. In Arcane and in postmodern media generally, the viewer is always required to reevaluate their reason for thinking certain characters are good or evil. We argue that, as a whole, society has moved away from modernist heroes and villains in storytelling in favor of stories that revolve around morally gray characters. Arcane is an excellent example of modern storytelling and demonstrates that society has lost faith in traditional heroes and villains. Modern media and storytelling in the 21st century reflects the reality that people can slip between good and evil and cannot be called concretely good and evil as they may have been in the past.